Welcome to the Movie Potluck Podcast, the podcast where you never know what dish the guys are bringing to the party. Movie reviews of the films that might have slipped right off your plate and gotten snatched up by Grandma's mean old poodle. Behind the scenes info that might just have that secret ingredient you've been craving all day. Special guests, surprise interviews, a lot of laughs, and much, much more. Now, here's your hosts, Big Bear Joe and Bigger T.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. The Movie Potluck Podcast. Big Bear Joe and Bigger T. What's up? What's up?
What's up, Big Joe? How you doing, buddy?
Big T, man. This movie we watched this time, man. It's all on you, man. A couple movies we've done, we both come into it liking it or agreeing, but this one right here, man, you suggested this. It's a movie that I vaguely heard about when it was come out. It's 10 years old. It's got some huge stars in it. But you suggested, man, I watched it and absolutely loved it. It's one of those that I feel like I can watch over and over again, and definitely would recommend to people. It's called The Way, Way Back. Yeah, I mean, it's
not to be confused.
You hit a home run on this one, man.
Not to be confused with The Way Back with Ben Affleck, the one about a coach or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you know, this was, like I told you, this is one of those that I always would, you know, I never kept HBO back in the day. I would get HBO because I liked watching Hard Knocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would have it, I would get it for just a month and I would just watch as many movies and record some, you know, if I didn't have time to watch them on my DVR, and then I would cancel it once Hard Knocks was up. You know, and then I would, you know, watch movies. Well, this was one that I caught the first time I watched it. I remember I caught it probably about 20 minutes into the movie. And I read the synopsis, you know, on my guide on my TV or whatever. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. I'll check it out. And I saw that Steve Carell's in it, and Allison Janney, and, you know, some Sam Rockwell and some of these others. And I'm like, man, I'm going to check this out and see what it's about. And just fell in love with the movie, man. It's just a neat movie. And then I went back and recorded it and watched it again later, and then ended up, I guess, buying it on Amazon Prime because it's one that I go back to every now and then and check out. I was glad you liked it. I was glad you appreciated it because, you know, sometimes you like movies, you know, like with all these, you know, some of y'all are going to watch this podcast or listen to this podcast, and, you know, we're talking like we love these movies, and you're going to be like, I don't get it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the way the potluck goes, ain't it, Joe?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's, I've come to trust you for sure. Cause the way we talk about movies, we pretty much are in the same lane on what we like, but this one's a little bit different than some of the other ones we've done, cause it is a big production. You know, it's got major stars. It's a major, you know, studio film, but it still flew under the radar, you know, and it's not, you know, it wasn't one that really was pushed. You know, you can tell they didn't have to put a ton of money into it. So they didn't want to, you know, just like put a lot of money into advertising and saying, hey, you know, and it's, I think we talked about it too. It's the first time we can remember that, you know, it's when Steve Carell starts to make that turn towards doing some drama, you know, getting out of the Michael Scott lane and the, you know, Anchorman and, you know, Bruce Almighty and, you know, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But why don't you tell everybody what the kind of a synopsis?
Yeah, man. I kind of give a little synopsis of it. And the first scene, you know, you realize Steve, like you just said, Steve Carell's in this movie, and, you know, you're going into it. You know, I imagine if I would have watched it, you know, I watched it after he had done some other dramatic roles, but you're going into it thinking Steve Carell, you're thinking Michael Scott, you're thinking Evan Almighty, you're thinking, you know, all those, you know, just 40-year-old virgin, those different roles that he had played. And the first scene sets you up to really dislike Steve Carell. And it's beautifully, just wonderfully written. It's called The Way, Way Back because Steve Carell's character drives a old station wagon, the old wood texture side, the woody wagon, I guess.
Almost, it's not as monster version as the family truckster, but it's
Yeah.
kind of that similar thing.
Yeah, it's the old 80s something, early 80s, late 70s model, probably. But it's been fixed up. So it's current times, so it's a nice vehicle, and it says in it this was the same one my dad drove,
Right.
So anyway, but what it is a story. Steve Carell is dating the mother of the main character, who is named Duncan. It's a 14-year-old boy. Steve Carell has a daughter of his own that she's a older teenager, real, just the kind of the stereotypical spoiled brat, prissy sort of teenage
cool
girl. Yeah, cool kid. Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of the cool kids.
Yeah. And Duncan is the nerdy, just nerdy kid. Okay. That has gone through a divorce, still kind of wishes he was with his dad. His dad had moved out to California or something. And so, anyway, so they're going to the Hamptons. I think it's the Hamptons, right? To
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
For the summer. Okay. So Steve Carell's character has a house there. His character's name is Trent, by the way. Trent has a house there, and so they're going there to stay for the summer. And so you have this cast of characters, which are staying at these lake houses, beach houses for the summer. And Allison Janney is next door neighbor, and she comes in like a whirlwind, which she's a wonderful comedic actress. And she comes in, and she's the next door neighbor, and she's a single lady. She's got a son who's great comic relief. He's got a messed up eye, and it provides just some great comedy there, her dealing with that. And then she's got a teenage daughter that is one of the key characters. She's kind of she hangs out with the Steve Carell's daughter, the kind of the spoiled brat, popular girl, but she's kind of got the nerdy side to her. So she kind of is drawn to Duncan a little bit as far as friendship goes. So anyway, Duncan goes there and he's unhappy. Doesn't get along with this. I mean, the first scene sets it up. We won't tell you exactly how it goes, but I mean, it's just a total, he doesn't get along with this boyfriend, doesn't like all that, but, still loves his mom and wants to be there for her. And he's trying to find ways to stay busy, and he ends up running across actually a couple of times before he goes to the water park, but he runs up to the Sam Rockwell's character, Owen. And Owen, he ends up at this water park, and Owen manages the water park. And Owen is a character. He's he's a central character, but he's kind of the guy that just hadn't grown up yet. But he's kind of reached the age where he needs to realize he needs to grow up. And
right.
But and he's got a lot of people telling him he needs to grow up, but he's such a loving and lovable person that people still stick with him and they still follow him, kind of deal, I guess is the best way to say it. But he manages the place and ends up kind of seeing something in Duncan and gives him a job at the water park working there. And it's these two different places. Duncan is miserable at his home. He's miserable around his mom and his and her new boyfriend and everything that's going on there. And then you have this water park where these people are just encouraging him and getting the best out of him.
It's his oasis.
Exactly.
His oasis.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just his happy place. And it's
the
place where he's able to be who he
always
wants to be, And so anyway, he's there, and there's some things going on with the boyfriend, and there's Maya Rudolph actually works she's in it. She's a Caitlin, she works there at the water park. She's kind of Owen's assistant and helps run it. Rob Corddry and Amanda Peet, they are a couple that they're kind of friends with this Trent character, Steve Carell's character, and they provide some good comedy and some other stuff too. But they live in the Hamptons there and kind of part of the whole thing. But you see this Steve Carell's character the whole time is just he's trying to be in a way he just wants Duncan out of the way so he can be with his mom.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Duncan is so awkward and just not putting himself out there and things that he's so critical of him, and he's trying to get him to do it, in the wrong ways for sure. He's trying to get him to in a lot of the wrong hurtful ways.
Right. What's the mom's name again?
Pam.
Yeah.
Toni Collette plays her, by the way.
Right.
Which I forgot Carell and Toni Collette played together in what was that? Little Miss Sunshine, whatever that movie. I think they were brother and sister in that. Mm-hmm. So this was a little different for them. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I just I'm sorry. Are you gonna? I didn't know if you were gonna go on a little bit more. I was just gonna kind of add to the fact that the thing that really got me about this film is that all these characters who are generally in films who are over the top personalities,
mm-hmm.
they're all, have more of they're all more of a reserved version of their normal characters. Even Toni Collette, who's played some really, really strong women in movies, plays more of a meek, passive person. Carell is normally over the top funny, is really, kind of he's not kind of, he's a jerk.
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell's character, he's really in his lane in this movie, I think. We talked about how, that could have been cast as, he's the cool guy, the cool older, he's like the cool teacher. He's like the cool teacher that's like, we'll just kind of hang out and just do whatever. But they also could have made it to where he was overly cool. He's overly good looking, and Sam Rockwell's not that.
Yeah.
Or they could have made him overly like party animal kind of guy, and he's not really that either. It's realistic. You know what I mean? These characters aren't like really overblown, cartoon versions of people. They're all real characters. Even Rob Corddry, who's in a ton of funny stuff, it just has some little funny moments, and he's just this co-star, and not really. And it's it's a fish out of water with Duncan. He's an environment he does not, because it's not only is his Trent's daughter one of the cool kids, one of the mean girls, where she comes that with, but Duncan's now surrounded by these people, this entire environment, it's upper echelon, it's kind of people looking down at other people, and he's coming from a background of he's not kind of on that level as far as popularity or financially or whatever. And it's like I said, it's a coming of age picture, but you've seen those, but this is done so differently because it's not only just following his story, it's following the parents' story, because it's like almost like they're all growing up together.
Yeah.
Because even in the movie they talked about how, what's the girl's name that's the daughter of House and Dragon?
She's where is it?
Anyway, she talks about, remember she had that quote where this is like spring break for the parents. And
yeah.
What it is, these parents are kind of reliving their childhood, and then you've got these kids, kind of the popular kids, kind of on the loose, doing their own thing, hanging at the beach and stuff. And you got Duncan, who's just like swimming around in circles, and he's literally doing that on his bicycle at times, kind of driving around in circles, trying to find a place to land.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's where he finds the water park. Like you said, he gets there and it's like, oh my gosh, these are my people. This is my tribe. Everybody's where everybody has their intricacies. Nobody cares what you look like or whatever, and it's fun, and it's like, oh, this is what a summer experience is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's the best parts of the movie, is the time that he spends with Sam Rockwell at the water park.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And even Maya Rudolph normally is overly funny in movies, and she's just kind of just toned down version, kind of the voice of reason with Sam Rockwell, and it all melds together so well. And this, to me, the symbolism too of certain things. It's kind of like Trent's daughter. I can't remember her name. But just the names they give to people, like Trent. Okay. That's if you wanted to name somebody as this kind of affluent, jerk, it would be Trent.
Yeah.
Like his daughter's boyfriend's name is Chad. And it's like, these names are just like, they're out of like, a book of, okay, what's these names that they bring these images into your head of what these people are.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And, man, I love this movie so much. Like I could watch this movie over and over again and get different parts out of it.
Yeah.
Which is what we talk about, how, what good movies are made of, the son of Allison Janney, you talked about, his issue with his eye. Well, instead of dealing with it like real, being real melodramatic about it, they deal with it in a comedy way. It's funny, it's just like, and Sam Rockwell's, poking fun at and giving him kind of like props. Hey man, that's a cool thing, and kind of uplifting him. And and even Allison Janney's character, she's playing something somewhat similar to what she does in Mom. She's a serious actress. If you were watching on The West Wing and stuff like that, I mean, she's got so versatile, but her character is real eccentric.
Yeah.
So in this movie, and she plays well with Toni Collette's character, because Toni Collette's more reserved, and Allison Janney's character is just kind of over the top and bombastic. You know what I mean? Kind of, even that scene where we're on the boat and she's like, they're all going on a boat. She's like, she just shows up with her son. She's like, yeah, I invited myself, and gets on this like date.
Yeah. Get over it.
Yeah. So,
well, and just to give credit, Nate Faxon and Jim Rash are the writers and directors. They team wrote it, team directed. And, like you said, man, this is one of those, like I was watching it, I watched it again before we did this podcast, and I've watched it probably 5 or 6 times at least, before that. And, but it hit me even harder yesterday when I was watching it again, how good of writing the first 2 scenes are. Okay. And I mean, you talked about the first scene,
right?
But the first scene sets it up. If you went into that movie thinking loving Steve Carell from Michael Scott or whatever, then you immediately realized, I hate this guy.
Right.
I don't like this. This guy is a bad guy. This is not the Steve Carell I'm used to watching on screen.
Right.
But they did it in such a way that it just flows. Right. And you're like, okay, you're not caught up in, it's just so weird seeing Steve Carell do something different. You're not caught up in that at all, because that first scene sets it up so perfectly.
Right.
And it sets up the rest of the movie. And then when Allison Janney comes in, it sets up her character, because she's a freaking tornado, man. Right. She just comes in and she's got, monologue after monologue. I mean, she's just spitting stuff out and just talking about.
She's a powerhouse. She's a powerhouse, especially in this movie.
And you learn so much about what's going on at the Hamptons and what, all kinds of stuff. I mean, just sets up the whole rest of the movie that just from that one little scene, of her coming in, I mean, there's just so much that happens with that. And the writing is just, it's so good. And I watched an interview with the writers, and Jim Rash plays a character named Lewis, which he's funny in this. He's kind of a
he's
guy that, tired of working at the water park, and he's, kind of always saying he's ready to leave or whatever. And which him and his negative attitude with Sam Rockwell's Owen's positive attitude is a great combination or whatever.
Right.
And then Nate Faxon plays Robbie, who's kind of another worker there, and kind of looks like, seems like Owen's, probably best friend or whatever at the park. But Jim Rash did say in writing the dealing with the boyfriend with Steve Carell, Duncan's dealing with him is from real life, from something he dealt with his stepdad.
Right.
And and I guess, that's part of the reason I guess I like it too, is I dealt with a jerk stepdad for a while in my life too. Right. And and so it connects with something that a lot of kids and a lot of people that were raised in that type of situation. So even if you're not a kid going through it, even as an adult, you relate to that kid because you've maybe gone through similar type of situations where some adults may have, whether they meant to or not, spoke some things into your life that was hurtful, and it's caused you pain.
Right.
And you needed someone like an Owen, and maybe you ended up having someone like an Owen that that told you that hey, that's on them, that's not on you, And so anyway, we forgot about another character in this, and well, we talked about it a little bit, but that car
right,
is a key character, which
right.
the name comes from. I guess we did talk about it, didn't we? But that car and that back seat, the way back.
It's not even a back seat, it's the cargo.
Yeah, it's the cargo area, but there's a seat there.
Yeah.
That that they had in those old station wagons where
I remember those days.
Comedians have talked about it and have told jokes about it or whatever, but it's you're getting a whole view of the trip that it's like you're in a different car. You're in the same car with your loved ones, but it's like you're not a part of the rest of the group. And that's the way Duncan felt, and so, in the first scene, they're in the car. And so immediately, just by that symbolism, and then, of course, the car plays a big role toward the end of it also. Man, it's just, and it is like I said, it's funny. It's got some good humor in it. There's no, it's got a little bit of language, not too bad. It's got
PG-13, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
it's not
it's kind of the content a little bit more than anything.
Yeah. It's not it's a good, just a good fun. It's fun and it's feel good. Right. I'd say.
Well, we talked about it too, where Duncan's not only made to sit in the very back and face the other direction, but which is of course where the title comes from, the way back. But he has an alternate view on life in general than everybody in his life. That's why he's the fish out of water. That's why he kind of, and it's like, Sam Rockwell sees things in him that you can tell Sam Rockwell saw himself. And he's wanting Duncan to embrace those parts of himself, where Trent, the stepdad, is wanting him to not embrace that because it ruins his cool factor by having this kind of dorky, future stepson, kind of deal. And it's like almost like we talked about it, where he's not only regulated to the very back, but it's like he's the baggage with the mom. It's not only he's treated like baggage, but he's like, okay, if he, Trent's like, basically trying to mold him into his ideal son. You know what I mean? That would be, part of the cool clique.
Yeah.
And it's like I want to be with the mom, and she's got this little, she's got this luggage that she's got to carry around, which is her son, and he's different than what I would want my son to be. And it's just this dynamic of, like I said, between, these parents trying to relive their childhood, even as much as him, Trent going back and getting a car just like his dad had when he was a kid, and them going to their little Hampton spring break for adults. And these kids are, these popular kids are living their lives, basically, unmonitored, and Duncan's like in the middle of it, who has a different view on life than everybody else. And he's facing the other direction, which also too, I thought about it, like in the old carriages and stuff, Stagecoach and things like that, or even like some of the first models of the cars, they call that the bumper seat.
Yeah.
And that's where like the servants would sit.
Yeah.
Like say it's a stagecoach, and that, say inside was, a aristocrat or somebody, whoever else, the servant sat facing the direction, everybody else sat facing forward. And, is so basically that he feels like he's an object instead of a person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He's just an inanimate object, and just like, well, he's, just kind of along for the ride or whatever. But, even in the back, that's where he first gets his first view of Sam Rockwell's character. And it's almost like Sam Rockwell kind of gives him the kind of the thumbs up and the nod, like, acknowledgement, hey, I'm one of your people, kind of thing, or whatever. And that first moment where he kind of like has a little bit of a smile on his face. So but yeah, I just love this movie because it's character driven. The dialogue's not over the top. They don't, have any over the top performances. It's like you said, the beginning, it sets the tone for the entire movie of who these two characters are, Duncan and Trent. And it's very well organized. It's a fun watch. It's not like it's depressing.
Yeah.
There's moments of it where it's but it's
you leave with a smile.
Yeah, you leave with a smile. But you talked about was it Nate, one of the writers, Nate Raskin is what he said his name was.
Nate Faxon.
Yeah. He's the guy that's you've seen more, that I've seen more. And so, like I said, he's in the Connors, and he's been a bunch of stuff. So you'll recognize his face when you see him. He's always been like a character actor, or whatever. And he's a, kind of another oddball there too, and it just, like I said, you could watch this movie over and over again and kind of see the storylines of some of the characters and see how they kind of, show Duncan the path a little bit, but you said that your research, you talked about there's a alternate ending that they talked about.
Originally this movie had been sold to a big studio, I think, or something. Someone had the rights to it, and it was going to be made as a bigger picture, and that somehow fell through. But one of the problems is the Hollywood people or whatever, in the interview I listened to, they called it the Hollywood ending.
Right.
There was a Hollywood ending, and we won't give away the ending, but the ending leaves some things unresolved. Not that but you don't want them to be resolved. Like it leaves you in some way hopeful for the future, right? I guess is a good way to say it.
Right.
But without giving too much away, but there's a couple characters that the Hollywood ending sort of redeemed them, and the writers were like, we don't like that. We we think we need to leave it. And so that's just one of the background things, that's interesting to hear the writers talk about that, because this was a passion project for them, something they had worked on and tried to get going for like 8 years, I think. And and then they ended up directing it themselves and going with a lesser budget, because they did take it away from the Hollywood group. And but they were, and a lot of it was, like Maya Rudolph said, she said, I was in because of Nate and Jim.
Right.
She said,
I think
she was
everybody,
friends with them.
yeah, I think everybody would have read the script and seen the quality, and seen the story, and big Hollywood producers and studios have ruined many a picture.
Yeah.
Taking that away from the artists, the screenwriters and the people that are the visionaries, and you got to give them props for hanging on to that, as long as it took, and saying, no, this is this story, how we intend it. Like you said, Lewis's character, what's that writer's name? The other writer?
James Rash.
You said, yeah, a lot of it's based on parts of his life. So it's like, that's personal to him.
Yeah.
A lot of this comes from a personal place. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to give this over. I'm just going to sit on this and wait until I can do it how I want to do it. You definitely, as an artist, you just got to like give props to that, because it's like, they could have easily just taken the money and ran.
Yeah.
And so, okay, do it how you want to do it. But man, I think them holding out is made to such an amazing picture.
Yeah.
Because we've all seen where, sometimes the last 5 minutes of a movie just completely ruin the first hour and a half that you watched it.
Yeah.
This is not like that. So,
yeah.
But
Joey, I want to talk about Duncan, this character, Liam James, the guy who played him. He does such a great job acting in this, and he really embodies this character so well. He kind of is, he sort of is who Duncan is. He's kind of that nerdy type guy. He just, you almost feel like he's not that great of an actor, yet he's acting his tail off in it.
Right.
Right. It's almost like he's, he does some just little things in it that just make it just really, really good stuff. He's that, his facial expressions. His just like when he smiles, you're like, you feel so good for him, in this movie, when he laughs, you're like, man, this way to go, kid,
Well, he's so relatable, because like I said, he's in that awkward stage that so many of us have been through, and our people we've known been through, and it's genuine, so it's definitely a character you root for.
Oh, for sure.
You see a reflection in him, you see a reflection of yourself in him, because you've either went through, at a younger age or later age, you kind of went through that in your life where you kind of didn't fit in, or you were growing faster, or you weren't up to date on the fashions or whatever it was. You kind of felt like it. So that's why it's so relatable. But yeah, he does a phenomenal job, and no spoiler alerts, but there's a cool dance scene. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things he does is, if you watch, his posture changes. His posture, like when he's at the Hampton house, where around his mom and the boyfriend, Steve, Trent, his posture's slumped over, he's down, he's beat up, dejected, not confident. But then as the more time he spends around Owen, and even after he spends time around Owen, he brings some of that back to the Hampton house with him. He stands up to his mom or for his mom there in one scene. And his shoulders start rolling back, and he starts having more confidence. There's a scene where he's at the water park, and this girl that he's been at the beginning, the next door neighbor girl, he's tragically awkward with. He talks about the weather, whether there at one point. But then they're walking around the water park, and man, he all of a sudden he's a whole different person.
Right. He's got a little swag in his game.
Yeah, his shoulders are back. He's quoting some of Owen's lines, using some of his jokes, and
he starts becoming comfortable in his own skin, and that's what Owen brings to him.
That's right.
It's the same thing he brings to Gilbert.
Yeah.
Before the eye, and that's what Owen does. It's like he builds them up, and it's like, hey, walk into your truth.
That's right.
Come from your own skin and be who you are, brought in this world to be. So,
and don't listen to. There's such a good scene between Owen and Duncan, that where those two are kind of at the park's empty. It's early morning. They're at the top of the slide, and Duncan's just been having a bad time. And I'm not going to tell you what happens in it, but it's a scene that just hinges the whole thing together, and where, just Owen, Sam Rockwell's character just does so much good in that scene and says so many good things. And anyway, well, man, this is a great movie. And Joey, we've been trying to come up with maybe a rating system, for how we can rate these movies. Okay. And so we're going to try out this. We're going to see if it catches with us. We're going to rate this 1 to 5 serving spoons.
Right.
Because at a potluck, Joe, there's a couple things that happen. First of all, if the dish is good, you're going to dip out extra scoops.
Right.
You're gonna really like it. So it's gonna be what you're gonna look around at all the rest of the stuff and say, hey, this one deserves some extra scoops on the plate.
You get that paper plate bend.
You only have so much
sagging.
Well, you only have so much acreage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you gotta economically look at that and say, okay, what am I gonna do here? Because you got fried chicken and you got other dishes, with cheese and taters and stuff mixed into them down the line. And you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to give space to here? If it's good, you're going to give, you're going to give multiple serving spoons. Right. And also, man, just as a guy that been at a lot of church potlucks, one of the things is when you're in line, a lot of times you'll be at a table and there'll be someone at the other side. Mm-hmm. And you have to wait. If there's only one spoon in the dish, right, and it's a popular dish, you got to wait on that spoon. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what happens is, if it's a real popular dish, one of the little ladies from the kitchen's going to come out and put another couple spoons in there, because they see things are getting back. The line's getting backed up because everybody's wanting that dish.
Right.
Okay? So that's why we're going with serving spoons.
Right.
So Joey, 1 to 5, what would you rate this movie? Serving spoons. How many serving spoons would you give it?
I'd say a solid 3.5. Solid 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, it's pretty delicious. It's pretty delicious. Yeah, I'd give it a solid 3.5. How about you?
I'd go to 4.
Yeah.
I would go to 4.
Yeah, it's pushing 4 on my end too, but yeah.
Yeah. I 3.5, 4 is about right. I think it's a solid movie, well written, well acted. There's not a lot to complain about. It's just there's better movies out there, and kind of like in ice skating or whatever, you're never going to give a perfect score. You're going to,
Are you saying I'm judging from the Russian end?
Yeah, that's right. You're the Russian judge.
I'm that 9.5 when everybody else is putting up 10s.
That's right. That's right. No.
I'm rebelling.
Man,
it's been a good one, man.
Yeah, man, it's a good one. We'll keep paying attention to the podcast. Keep looking for more. We'll have some more good movies. We got a good list of some good ones. Some of them are like this one that one of us have seen, the other one hadn't, and so we got to do some watching ourselves. But we'll keep plugging away.
Sir,
Joe?
let's eat.
All right.
Let's eat.
Well, Joe, wrap us up, man.
Yeah, man. It's been the Movie Potluck Podcast. It's been another enjoyable experience, Big T. So, man, until next time.
Watch, like, share, comment. Let us know what you think on the comments on the video, comments on social media, wherever you find us. Let us know what you think. Interact with us. Tell us movies we need to check out.
Absolutely.
Tell us, subscribe to this channel, all that good stuff. That's how things like this grow. And guess what, Joe? We want to grow.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep taking in scoops.
That's right.
All right.
Man, have a good one, Joe.
All right, buddy. We'll see you.
The preceding podcast is the sole property of Bear Meats World Media Group, LLC. Any copying, distribution, or use of its imagery or audio without express written consent is strictly prohibited by law.